We're here for the National Charter School Founders Library, and you're the founder of a charter school.
I think there's a whole lot of teachers I had in high school that would be absolutely dumbfounded that I've been involved in education. I barely made it out.
Well, education's beyond the four walls of the school, right?
Well, thankfully for me. Thankfully for me it was. And maybe some of that, maybe some of my education background and the fact that I tried to live at the intersection of minimal effort and acceptable GPA, right? And because it was in many respects uninspiring to me. Education was not something that I was inspired by, and hopefully what we've been able to do here at the Aviation Academy turns that around a bit for kids.
Well, as we look around, if you are inspired by flight, this is the place to be.
Well, and inspired, it's not just about flight, it's aviation, but most of our kids don't go into aviation careers. Most of our kids go into a variety of other careers. And so flight is an organizing principle. It is a concept. It is a guideline for us. It is a mantra that flight and that in aviation, one of the things that happens in aviation is that that the higher you go, the broader your horizons. If you've been in an airplane, as I know you have many, many times, the higher you climb, the further your horizon opens up and expands, and your possibilities become evident to you. And we want our kids to see those kinds of possibilities, those kinds of potentials. And aviation also is another organizing principle in that it requires diligence. It requires attention to detail. One of the things that we say in aviation is that aviation is not inherently dangerous, but it is completely unforgiving of error. Yeah. And so we try to get that idea to kids that no, life is full of potential, but you also have to be sure that you're paying attention along the way.
The details matter, reading and the writing matter, but also that idea that attitude determines altitude?
Discipline matters, absolutely. Attitude matters, effort matters. We say to our kids all the time, if you bring your A game, no matter what your God-given gifts may have been, and you bring your A game to school, we will bring our A game to help you be all that you want to be and all that you're able to be.
That's a fair trade. Let's go right back to the beginning. Who is Dick DeVos?
Well, I would hope that I would start off by saying that a man of faith, a husband and father. That's who I am. At the core, and I think those things are what drive me and what motivate me. And certainly, if I go back to my faith perspective, as a Christian, for me that means how do we try to help make the world a better place. And so that can be defined, and many people will define that in many different ways. But for me, this school is one of those ways that we've been able to say, how do we help the world be a better place? How do we help provide more opportunity for more people to be all that they were created to be? This school's doing it every day in an amazing way, and I couldn't be more proud.
Well, we have a powerful creator, and to have you in the school helping them develop that character and that attitude and the skills to take flight is a beautiful thing. Let's talk about your own education. If you think back to your childhood, not only did you have schooling, but you also had education. How do you distinguish the two, and what was your early schooling and education like?
Well, I grew up, I went to the local public school, graduated from the local public high school. My mother was an educator as well, and so that was a great gift to me, because not only would she correct my grammar, but since she was a better typist when she did my papers, she would also help correct my grammar, which was a big assist. But education was important in my family. because of my mother, but because of my father, who was not highly educated. He went to school. He tried to go to college and quit relatively quickly. Went into a business career and did okay. So I think I grew up with a practical balance between education and applied education. That education is important, but that also it's how you apply what you learn, how you apply what you know. Back to that idea of making the world a better place. It's a matter of taking that education and also applying it in a meaningful and constructive way. And so, so I hopefully got a good balance of that in the home where I grew up. And I received access to a great education, but as I mentioned earlier, I was not the best student and was not highly motivated, demonstrated by the fact that I took a first run at college. It tried to actually confirm the thesis that I could graduate from college while never really attending a class. It didn't work out so well. I was advised by the Dean of Students soon after that if I stayed much longer, the scores would become a part of my permanent record, but if I dropped out before the end of the week, they would all vaporize. The decision was pretty obvious in my case. Reason being, I wasn't motivated by the school. I ended up going back, finishing my business degree at a school that was focused in the area that captivated my attention. I knew I wanted to be in business. That was my goal. And once everything was oriented around something that mattered to me, something that motivated me and captured my attention, that made all the difference. All of a sudden, the education was meaningful to me, and I could see the connection between what I was learning and where I wanted to go. And so the Aviation Academy, I think, has done a great job. The team here have done a great job of connecting those dots between where am I and how do I see how this is going to connect to a future that I want to be a part of, and motivating kids to learn. Whether or not they ultimately end up in education, it connects them to an idea that motivates them, focuses them, and that's a difference.
Isn't it amazing, whether it's students at a school or our own children as fathers, that when there's a purpose and a reason, what they can become?
Absolutely. Well, it's true of all of us, isn't it? The things we care about are the things we lean in on. And as we grow older, we realize that there's probably stuff that we don't care as much about that we still have to do, and that's a truism. But boy, life sure is much more interesting if the work that you're doing connects with your passion.
Hard to be great at something that you don't care about. You've been a champion for freedom. You've been engaged in public policy. You've been engaged in politics. You've been engaged in founding a school. Talk to us about what are the experiences from those different lenses and those different perspectives.
I've been privileged to be involved in a whole lot of different dimensions in the world, from international business to education, serving the State Board of Education in Michigan, being involved in this amazing school, being involved politically, and being a candidate, being a spouse of a public servant. A couple of things that maybe jump out at me. One is the importance of being involved as citizens in our political process, whatever your particular point of view might be. We also do a fair bit of philanthropy, but we consider, frankly, public service and our involvement in politics as part of our philanthropic effort. Public policy matters to our communities. And so how the leaders that we elect, the ideas that we champion as a community, as a nation, as a state, matter. And so it's really an extension of our engagement with the world. We hope that we give generously of our resources, but also of our time to try to ensure that we're focused on the right things. And back to that idea, how do we make our world a better place, our neighborhood, our community, our state, our country?
Education in Michigan and nationally, we hear about the poor test scores, the lack of proficiency in reading and math. How do we get from where we're at to the vision that you have where every student's taking flight, whatever that flight means to them?
Whatever that flight is for them and to their journey. I think what we've argued for, we being my wife and I and many others that we've worked with over the years, is the idea that we've created a system in the past of public education, and that system has become very creaky over the last 30, 40 years, and it's become evident by the declining test scores. In large measure, what we've done is that we have built a rigid, one-size-fits-all system that does not work for our kids. In an increasingly diverse society, in a culture where we are increasingly getting what we want more quickly as consumers, education is doing quite the opposite. The traditional education process is doing quite the opposite. We also disengaged parents from the process. We said to them, just give us your kids and then leave us alone. We'll take it from here. Thanks very much. Well, the system has not delivered. And that disengagement of parents has also, I think, been a part of the problem. So our solution, the idea we had was something, we've got to engage parents in the process so that home and school continuum becomes much stronger. And then also find ways to make school much more interesting and much more relevant to students. And that Aviation Academy, case in point. This is only one of many different ways that we can design an educational experience that's going to work for kids. Does the Aviation Academy work for every young person? No, not at all. There's a lot of things we don't do and a lot of kids that we would not serve very well. But the kids that choose this experience, for whom this is motivating, and for whose parents buy into what we're doing, now we've got something that starts to work, and the results prove it.
Talk to us about the results. Rumor has it, highest performing high school in Michigan.
Well, I would say we're probably one of the highest. There's multiple dimensions around it. We were the highest in one dimension. But are we one of the top performing high schools in Michigan? The answer is yes. We're also compared against a number of high schools who can select their students, which we cannot do. Again, I know many people watching realize what the rules that charter schools work under, but many may not. The charter schools are not able to select their students. If you reach your capacity, your stated capacity, then you have to go to a lottery and you then are taking every child, just like every public school does, take every child who wants to come in on a lottery basis. There are actually some high schools, public high schools, they're called magnet schools typically, that are able to select students. A lot of people don't realize, and some of the top performing schools in the state of Michigan are magnet schools. It makes sense. They can hand pick their students. Fair enough. I think it's an unfair comparison. So when you look at schools that are open to all kids, we are one of the top performing schools, and I think it has to do with our culture. I think it has to do with our team and the focus of our team. And I do think it has to do with the fact that we have an organizing principle that then trickles down and creates a culture that people buy into, that our kids buy into, and are motivated by. And again, that motivation makes an enormous difference.
That choice, that engagement, that motivation, and we like to say charter schools are free, public, and open to all.
Absolutely.
Walt Disney used to talk about the power of ideas. So you've had this ability to see the world, do anything. You chose to found a charter school. Why use your time that way? And when did you first come to the idea that, hey, I think I'm going to do this?
Well, in 2006, I was the Republican candidate for governor in Michigan. I think we were both a lot younger back then, and worked together in that project. And the citizens of Michigan decided that they preferred me as a private citizen as opposed to the next governor. And I respected that decision. But one of the interesting things that folks don't realize is that if you run for office, you've really kind of cleared your decks to be able to serve if you're in fact elected. Because the day after an election, you're either extremely busy or you've got a completely open calendar. And in my case, my calendar got pretty open. But there's a great gift in that I was able to step back then and say, okay, what am I supposed to do? What's next for me? You know, in life, we all get into ruts and tracks, and we just sort of do what we've been doing and continue to keep digging the way we've been digging. And the great gift I had was this break that allowed me to recalibrate. And so my wife Betsy, it was her idea basically, and she said, as we talked about what is there that I can make a difference, she said, well, why don't you think about as one of your projects, something that combines two of your passions. I have a passion for aviation. I started flying later in life. I started flying on my 45th birthday. So I didn't grow up military, always loved the idea, and finally said, I'm going to learn how to fly. And it was a passion area for me personally. And she said, why don't you think about combining that passion for aviation with a practical application? We've talked about the idea of schools of choice. Talked about the idea of creating unique schools and unique opportunities. Maybe you ought to think about doing that in real life right here at home. And it was her initial idea, that initial spark that inspired me to start thinking about what has become this school. And I was blessed that a tremendous number of people, far more talented in education than I, came around this idea and made it all happen. And I hope I was able to be a productive part of the team.
It's amazing what charter school founders go through. I remember being at the founding of the Henry Ford Academy, and then former Ford CEO Jacques Nasser told Governor Engler at the time, it was easier to open an auto plant in Germany than a charter school in Michigan. How hard was it for you?
Well, first of all, we had to figure out how to even get a charter, which is, to me, is fascinating. So you say you have an individual and a group of people that are prepared to put together a school that would only function if others and parents agreed that it was a good idea to send their kids there. But we had to go through this tremendous number of hoops. One of the problems for us was that at the time when we were establishing the school, there were no charters available.
That was because the universities were capped.
The charters in the state had been capped out. That apparently the legislature and the governor had decided that, well, only a certain number of kids can have opportunity, which made no sense to me at all. But that was their decision at the time, and which again I don't understand, because it said there will never be one more charter school in the state than there is demand from parents for a charter school. It's self-leveling. Parents will send their kids to charter schools only if they believe that that's in their child's best interest. And so there's no reason for a cap, because there's just not going to be an excess charter school. If there's not going to be students attending a charter school, the school will cease to exist, unlike many traditional publics.
Because of the power of voting with your feet.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we had to figure out how to get a charter back in those early days, and there was one organization. It actually was a tribe in northern Michigan who was able, because they were not subject to the state regulations, were able to offer us a charter beyond the cap.
And that was the Bay Mills Community College.
Exactly right. And so we went to, and I went there personally and met with the chief and asked them to consider us, told our story, shared our vision of what we wanted to create. And they liked it. They felt that they could get behind it. And I think we overperformed and we did more than we promised to them, and they were a great partner. And I think they were very, very pleased with what we were able to do together.
I had the opportunity last summer to go up to Bay Mills in Brimley for their 40th anniversary of the college. And one of the highlights was their involvement as a charter school authorizer and what they've been able to do across Michigan.
No, it's extraordinary.
So you've actually had multiple perspectives. Founder of a charter school, you're now the board member of a charter school, And you also served on Grand Valley State University's board, where you were the authorizer of charter schools. What have you learned from your multiple perspectives?
And a member of the State Board of Education for a few years.
And that's where all the great leadership comes from, right? Aren't they endowed with general oversight and supervision?
I think you're maybe confusing leadership with supervision, but no, I've been blessed to have a lot of perspectives, and none of the perspectives have dissuaded my point of view that charter schools are an enormous gift to Michigan, and that we should be leaning in toward charter schools much more actively than we are, and it's just because they work for families, they work for kids. The problem is, of course, that they don't work for some adult groups. And so it's all about the politics of adult issues that seem to dominate the conversation, not about what's right for parents, what's right for kids. And we get back to that, charter schools, and I think expanded education freedom is going to be in everyone's best interest, and in our states and our nation's best interest, because it will unleash a creativity and an energy and an engagement of our students that will be extraordinary, and it'll get us back on the plus side of student performance.
Part of the founding idea of charters is that they were going to be substantially deregulated public schools, right? Freed from all the rules and regulations in exchange for results. Did you experience that as the founder of a school?
Well, we're a public school, and so there are certain things that we have to subscribe to, and the answer is no. We are still subject to an enormous amount of regulations and restrictions and political silliness that do dampen creativity, do dampen innovation. That being said, we do start with a couple of fundamental differences that I think help charter schools identify themselves, provide an exceptional education, and allow them to focus on their audience, on their students. And there are some advantages to charter schools, and that's why I believe that we should have more, not less.
You're on the board of the school now, right? Having made the transition from founder to governing board member. Your boards are appointed as charter public schools in Michigan. Does that allow a particular focus and orientation that you think's helpful in accomplishing the mission?
I think it's fundamentally one of the key differences. The boards of charters are appointed and they're self-perpetuating. That they don't start from a political process. If you look at a traditional public school in Michigan, board members are elected. So you immediately start with a political process. You immediately start with individuals who are running for the Board of Education, who oftentimes have a grievance, who oftentimes have one particular point of view. It's this program, their students, it's sports, it's their neighborhood, it's whatever their particular agenda might be. And so you end up immediately in a political environment, whereas in a charter school, it's much more business-like. And I know for many people, they go, well, you're talking about education, it's not a business. No, it's not a business. But it is benefited if it's operated in a business-like basis. Because what do businesses do? They allocate resources and they deal with people to do whatever it is that they need to do to make sure their customer is ultimately really well taken care of, because if they don't, their customer doesn't come back. So a business-like approach makes an enormous difference in a charter school. So we don't start from politics. We start from customer service. We start from student success. We start from parental engagement. Those are the places that we start from. And that makes an enormous difference, and I think that helps to frame the culture of every charter school.
Yeah. We like to say at the end of the day with a charter, two things have to happen. The students got to learn, and the business and the taxpayers' money have to be taken care of.
Absolutely.
And without those, there really is accountability, because you end up out of business, which is, that in itself is new to public education. That lack of performance has serious results or consequences.
And we've seen that for sure, that the public school, the public schools, the traditional public schools are certainly slow to respond, and Charters cannot be. They've got to respond. They've got to change, or else they're gone.
As a new school, there's so many firsts, right? The first day of school, the groundbreaking, the first graduation. Tell us about some of the firsts at West Michigan Aviation Academy that just make you so proud.
Oh, okay. Well, I think some of the firsts for me were that we were able to teach kids to fly airplanes. We were putting high school seniors up in airplanes alone.
The ones that sometimes can't clean their room.
Well, it's amazing how when you demonstrate trust, you train them and prepare them, they have extraordinary capabilities. To some extent, I think as a society, we have infantilized our children. That we've protected them to such an extent, and we've tried to keep them young. We remember back in many years ago when you were 18 years old, there was a lot that was expected of you. Now, today we've sort of undermined that as a culture, but not at this school. At this school, we lean in and say, no, you have tremendous capabilities, and we're going to hold you accountable, but we're going to trust you to demonstrate those capabilities. So our first student happened to be a young man, who was our first pilot. I was thrilled when our first female pilot, because we tend to be a little male heavy in our student mix. It's not because of selection, it's just because of the nature of the interest that's come our way. So we had our first lady. We've had a number of our students now who have gone on to military academies to be selected and attend military academies. Many others who were able to achieve scholarships through military service. We have a high percentage of our students go on to military service. The other one that I thought was a first for me, when I sat down with our first graduating class of seniors and asked them what was the next steps for them. Some of them were going into business in many different directions. But as I sat there in that class, there were two that stuck out to me. One of our students in the first class went on to be a professional ballet dancer. And the other one was going to attend as his next step the School of Mortuary Sciences. Because I had a little laugh with that one. I mean, I think it speaks to the diversity of our students and where they go after this. But I said, attending an aviation school, we do our very best to be as far away from that business as we possibly can, and we make sure we have a great safety record to prove it.
But that's a great example of taking flight, right? Whatever that journey ends up for each individual student, you're giving them the preparation and the training that they can go take flight.
Well, one of the things that we did talk about, and I've said this early on, generally when the students weren't in the room, when we're talking with parents, I would often say to them, well, just remember this, while your kids are looking at airplanes, we're going to slip them a really great education while they're not looking. Yeah. So wherever they want to go, they'll be well prepared. And I think the facts have proven it.
Let's go back to the state board a little bit. If you were on the state board now and you could make the environment better for charter schools, are there any things, or for all of public education, are there things that come to mind that, boy, a couple changes here or there would really be a game changer?
Well, when I was at the state board, we had some stuff that was completely silly. But I think the game changer would be to find ways to deregulate, to take some of the politics out of schools and allow schools to get back to serving parents and kids more freely and more easily. The amount of paperwork that we have to do as a charter school, the amount of reports that we have to file, I can't even imagine that anybody reads these silly things. But it's somebody's job to collect this paper, and it'll go into a file and probably never heard from or seen again. So I'd love to find ways that we could streamline and
The regulatory
simplify and
burden
save.
is just astounding.
Well, and save time and save money, but most importantly, all of that effort would then be able to swing towards student performance and helping kids do better and supporting our staff, our teaching staff, and not our administrative staff. If you look at education, public education across the country, the largest single category of growth and employment in schools is not teachers, it's administrators. It's staff. It's people filling out paperwork and doing all sorts of things that don't connect to helping a child develop, grow, and learn.
It's so true. And where do you want people to spend their energy? With the kids.
Well, that's
right?
it.
And we're
well,
taking them away from it.
That's what teaching and learning is absolutely all about. At a point on the state board, we had this thing called boundary modifications. Now you can have, there is more freedom of choice between public schools. But back then, if you were a parent and you lived on a boundary between two school districts, you'd have to go through this enormous process to get your property reallocated to a different school system. It seems pretty silly today as I look back on it. I used to, and these would be hearings, and
you could end up in jail if you did it wrong as a parent.
Absolutely, and there were these. We'd end, as a board member, we'd end up with these notebooks full of testimony and hearings and all of this stuff by parents, just trying to get their kids into a school that was going to work better for them. And I used to read this stuff, and I finally concluded, I really don't need to read any of it. What I need to understand is if the parent wants to send their child to a different school because they will believe it will be better for them, I support the parent, period. It saved me a ton of time. But these are the fundamental philosophical orientations we need to get back to get education back on track.
Let's go to your time at the university as an authorizing agency. That was new in Michigan, that universities could charter schools was a new idea, really nationally even. What was it like to be an authorizer of those first schools?
Well, I give Don Lubbers an enormous amount of credit at Grand Valley. Grand Valley leaned in and leaned in big time on this idea, and so I give Don enormous credit. And it was controversial, and there were countervailing forces, as we've discussed, oftentimes adults who were more focused on them and their jobs than they were about kids and kids' futures. And so there's a lot of political pressure around this. The teachers' unions, in particular, are noteworthy for their continued objection to student freedom and to parental expansion, education freedom. Why? Pretty simple. It's all about adult jobs for them. That's just awful. It's just awful how many students' lives the teachers' unions have interrupted, disrupted, or cast aside as a result of their efforts to protect their jobs and their political influence. It's shameful, frankly.
What's it like to be married to the Secretary of Education?
Well, during that time, she was pretty controversial. It was a great honor to support her, and I know she would say it was a great honor to serve her country. If you recall, during that time, she was working in the first Trump administration, and it was a pretty controversial administration, and she was the point of the spear. And the teachers' unions in particular were vicious around her and against her, to the extent that, which is crazy to me, that she required 24/7 personal protection because of the number of threats on her life. This is education. We're not talking national security here. So it was very intrusive, it was very disruptive of our lives. But I was so proud because I would see her get up every morning and get ready to go to work. And after getting blasted by one person or another on the news on the other side of the aisle, would try to rip her apart and impugn motives. She'd get up every morning with a smile on her face, say, oh, how can I go do something good for parents and students today? That was her work, that was her orientation. Adult issues, she'd set those aside. How can we make the world a better place, and how can we help kids?
When we stay student-centered, it really helps the work, doesn't it?
It just simplifies life if you know where you're going.
My dad used to say, son, it's what you learn after you know it all that really counts. As you look back at everything you've learned, what are the ones that you want to share with others?
Well, the one thing is that you never stop learning. That's for sure. You never, ever stop learning. Second, I would say is probably my biggest lesson is it's not what you're able to do, but oftentimes, most of the time, it's who you're able to surround yourself with. Have probably not, I've not been as appreciative of how important a team around you is if you're going to make something happen. And people coming together, bringing different perspectives to the table, bringing their different skills to the table. And the fact that this school exists is a great example. I didn't have any of the talents needed, but I did have an idea and a vision and an ability to bring something to the party. But we had people of great talent who really made it all happen. And so who you surround yourself with is enormously important. Who you hang out with. You know, my dad used to say, who you hang out with as a kid matters. It does.
Brag a little bit. You had a founding team. You've got a team now that's carrying the vision forward. What would you say to them? What are part of the secrets of getting a team that has dedicated and bought into the vision and making such phenomenal experience for students?
Been blessed that this school's been blessed that we have those people, and it starts from the top. I think we've got a board. Our board has been essentially in place since the beginning of the school, so we've had great continuity at the board level that has helped keep us true to our mission. We've had two amazing CEOs at the school who are providing great leadership day to day. Again, that's really important. And then having a vision that is consistent, that our leadership team and our faculty team has been able to buy into has been enormously important to attracting really talented people, but then knowing that they share the vision, that we're all on the same page, and that we're in this together, has built an amazing culture at this school I couldn't be more proud of.
Well, you guys definitely are on your A game. We like Jim Collins' definition of greatness, right? Deliver superior performance, make a distinctive impact, and have a lasting endurance. And I'd say you're 3 for 3.
Well, and we're getting the right people on the bus and the right seats on the bus as well to continue this effort. And I just couldn't be more proud to be on this team.
Dick, is there anything else you'd like to share as you think back to founding the school and where you're at and where you're going?
I think I think it's easy to say, well, that's great. It's an aviation school, but that's not for everybody. But I do think we're an exemplar of thinking about education and maybe career education in particular in a whole new way. Typically, when we think about vocational or career education, we tend to think about trades and we tend to think that way. But career education has much more breadth to it. Training people to do various types of work in our world. Many people do not think about aviation as a career, as career training, but it very much is. And oh, by the way, it opens up the entire world to you. Oh, by the way, it pays really well. It's an amazing lifestyle. And so as we think about preparing students in unique and special ways, this becomes one of them. I remember sitting with the chairman of UBS, United Bank of Switzerland, in Zurich, and he started out as a teller through a career program in his high school that took him into banking. So we need to expand our vision of how we can better prepare kids for a variety of careers. This is just one, but hopefully it helps people think more broadly about that potential.
Well, there's so much to be proud of. I just want to thank you for being a founder of a charter school and for all you've done from a policy standpoint, and then to go out and walk the talk and actually put it into practice.
Thank you, Jim. Couldn't be more proud. Thanks to you and your team for the work you continue to do to advance this idea of charter schools, but more broadly the idea of education freedom and expanding the opportunities that parents and kids have through thinking about education through a brand new lens. I think that is the future, and I couldn't be more grateful for your efforts.
Well, to educational freedom.
Amen.
All right, thank you.